A hysteric letter. Dear brother, I'm writing to you from the distant Adelaide Republic. Forgive me for not writing to you in a while, and I hope you aren't too worried about my safety and well-being. I'm doing great, and I have in fact much to tell you about my recent travels. As of writing this letter, I am staying in a remote village where time has halted seemingly. I do not know for how long, but the residents of this small settlement where only four clans live have isolated themselves from the rest of the country and the world. Whenever I ask how long they've been living like this, they tell me that this has been their life their entire lives. The young and the old alike. Some of these people are in their 80s, so I assume it's been this way since at least the start of the century, maybe prior. Three of the families are Russian and one is German, judging by their last names. They all speak an outdated dialect of the language and even count their dates using the old calendar. I think this is where my compliments for these people will end. The truth of the matter is that they are deeply afraid of modernity and have some outdated and dangerous superstitions. I say this because it seems like they are all carrying tuberculosis. While they are lively and joyous for people who are on the brink of coughing themselves to death, they are all visibly gaunt and pale. Severe cases are hunched over and barely mobile. I'm pretty sure I've seen a few lying half dead on the ground. No one seems to bother to pick them up. Simply put, no one cares. It's natural for them. The stench of death is proverbially common here, and they embrace it with passion. They call the cophenia the work of undead spirits, vampires, and other terrible devils who came back from the afterlife. I am equally fascinated and mortified by the lives of these people, refusing to believe me it is caused by bacterium and that it is treatable with conventional medicine. Before I digress, three other men and I went to the nearby forest last night. That's where the family had been burying its dead for generations. Apparently, an unassuming patch of land with an old oak marked by a few barely noticeable cut marks. Unsurprisingly, the men knew where to dig. After all, they've done the same more than once. They dug for a few long minutes as I held a sole oil lamp over their heads, illuminating a tiny patch of night wilderness. The more they dug, the worse the smell of the corpse became. It also became clear that she had indeed been what these people consider a vampire. Blood still coated her lips, which is again common to victims of tuberculosis. Her hair and nails seem to have grown, which is explained by the skin receding and drying out. They have people lying on the ground next to their houses who look about the same and smell almost as bad, and they still think this one is dead but comes back to life every other night, while the ones in the village are still alive. Turned out that after tearing open her garments, he tore open her inside, reaching with his bare hands into her shriveled little form as if she hadn't had enough, and pulled out something. The sound of him tearing out something from within the corpse made me shudder visibly. The small reddish-brown organ he pulled out of the girl was her liver. He dropped it on the ground by my feet. I felt the urge to throw up at that moment. In the meantime, another man was trying to break off a branch from the oak tree. When I asked him what for, he said it was to stake her. The man straddling the girl reached inside her chest, underneath the ribcage, and started fondling the heart. He cursed angrily, and there had been blood in the heart. Some words he used were unfamiliar to me. Can you imagine my shock when the first man decided it would be as smart to decapitate the corpse with a shovel? He just hit it out of the blue with full force across the neck. The noise of that blow made me cringe physically. I turned my gaze to him as I watched him mindlessly slam the shovel again and again at the neck. Blood droplets flew all over the place, further coating the man straddling the corpse. At some point, the girl started leaking blood from her mouth, and the man on top of her recoiled in horror. Thankfully, the man with the wooden branch was done praying over it, I suppose, and finally decided to pull all five of us out of our misery. He held the branch high above his head and walked toward the corpse. Once over her, he jammed the branch as hard as he could into the heart of the girl. The body let out a short and loud gurgling sound before returning to its silent rest. You will not believe me why, but about halfway back to the village, our lamps went out of oil. Surrounded by almost complete darkness, we stopped for a moment, and at that moment, I heard something whistling behind me. Turning around, I saw the girl standing in the woods. She was pale, almost too pale. The moonlight had colored her form in a silver tint. Her eyes were icy blue. Something about her was terribly wrong. I was going to say something to the others, but then she smiled. Jagged teeth covered in blood had adorned her mouth before she disappeared altogether. They noticed I wasn't moving and urged me to keep moving. I didn't tell them anything, but I couldn't keep that monstrous smile out of my mind. I don't know what I've seen, but I will not stay here longer than a couple more days. One man whom I went out with felt terribly ill during that night. He might have had the disease in remission, but I can't know for sure. He never mentioned being sick in any case. He was bound to get it regardless after digging inside the body of a person who recently died from the same plague. From the look of things, I don't think it'll be long before he joins the girl in the forest. I think they're about to go vampire hunting. Once again tonight, I won't join them this time. Seeing one corpse get due to an absurd hysteria was enough. With this, I conclude my letter. I hope you are doing fine and won't be too bothered by the details. Love you, brother. Stay in touch. Abigail, my dearest. I experienced love once in my life. It was towards a girl named Abigail. She went to the same all-girls academy. We both got in because of our scholarships. She had bright blue eyes and blonde hair. I was shy and was made fun of because of my race and income. I was called slurs. The boys at the school would break my cheap school supplies knowing I couldn't replace them. My dad told me to fight back, but I was too weak. No one ever cared until Abigail came. It was junior year and a new girl transferred. We didn't have any classes together and first met at lunch. I was in the corner table until my bullies approached me. They made fun of me and after a while they started to get physical. They pulled my hair. I told them to stop in my soft voice. They wouldn't stop. Then Abigail intervened. It was like a scene straight from a movie. She grabbed one of my bully's hair and dragged it down to the ground. Pieces of hair were going straight to the ground. After a bit, the floor was turning red. Abigail pulled so hard that blood was coming out. It felt endless. Then the teacher came to grab Abigail. She was suspended, surprisingly not expelled. It was safe to say that I was never bullied again. When I asked her about it, she said I gave her a taste of her own medicine. One day, we were studying in the library when Abigail saw my scars on my arms. She let out in tears when she saw it. She wasn't mad like how my dad would be. It was so painful to see her cry and felt like a 12-inch dagger was being stabbed into me. I never hurt myself after that. Abigail was fascinated by stars. She would always joke about how she was an alien. I told Abigail about my birthday shortly after we met. My parents never celebrated, but Abigail got me a present. It was a pendant, shaped like a star. She whispered into my ear and said, "You're my shining star." I loved Abigail, but I was taught that two women couldn't be together. One day, she didn't come to school. The teacher announced that a girl had been killed. Abigail. Her father had beaten her to death. I miss you, Abigail. It's been over 10 years. If you're reading this, Abigail, I will cherish our memories I have of you.